The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Crown Heritage Bank's flagship branch in Manhattan, casting golden beams onto polished marble floors that gleamed like they had never seen dust. As bankers in tailored suits paraded past one another with the pomp of people who believed they ran the world, or at least the money in it. At the heart of the main hall sat Marcus Wilton, the branch manager, with his Italian loafers propped ever so slightly under his walnut desk, reviewing investment portfolios he barely understood but pretended to. He thrived in this environment of superficial smiles and passive-aggressive elitism, where power wasn't just demonstrated in numbers but in gestures like who got offered coffee, who had to wait, and who got called ma'am or miss. That particular Tuesday morning, an elderly black woman entered the bank wearing a blue church hat, orthopedic shoes, and a calm smile on her weathered face. Her name was Loretta James, and she'd come on behalf of her daughter, rising name in the tech world, though few in that building would recognize it. Loretta carried an envelope with her daughter's instructions and all the necessary identification to finalize the opening of a multi-billion-dollar escrow account. But appearances, as they often do in stories like this, betrayed truth. Marcus barely glanced at Loretta before concluding she was either lost or confused, maybe both. "Ma'am, this isn't the service desk," he said dismissively. "You'll want the other side of the building." Loretta explained politely that she had a 10 a.m. appointment under the name Nova James Holdings LLC, but Marcus raised his eyebrows skeptically, then scowled when she slid her daughter's ID and paperwork across the desk. "Ma'am, I don't know who told you that name means anything here," he said, scoffing. Then came the moment that would cost him everything. Without even reading the documents, Marcus lifted Nova James corporate ID bearing the name of the youngest black female CEO on the Fortune 500 list and disdainfully tossed it onto the floor like it was a candy wrapper. Loretta froze. The room felt suddenly cold despite the summer heat outside. "I don't know what scam you're trying to run," he added, "but if you don't leave now, I'll have security escort you out." He turned away as if that were the end of it. It wasn't. 5 minutes later, the double doors of the bank burst open again, this time with the quiet fury of presence. A tall, poised woman in a crisp white power suit walked in, flanked by 2 assistants and her general counsel. All eyes turned. Bank employees stood straighter. Phones dropped. One even whispered, "Is that Nova James?" She didn't speak until she reached Marcus's desk and picked up her ID off the floor without breaking eye contact. "Hello," she said coolly, her voice laced with both elegance and fire. "I'm Nova James, the CEO of the company your bank just lost a $5 billion asset management deal with. You disrespected my mother. I'm here to make sure that mistake costs you." Marcus stammered, face draining of color, eyes darting toward the boardroom where his superiors had just emerged, faces flushed and horrified. One mouthing "Oh my God" as they realized who she was. But it was too late. The entire financial press would know by noon. By the next morning, Nova James' viral statement would be trending globally. "When you throw a black mother's ID on the ground, don't be surprised when your stock does the same." The morning after Nova James left Crown Heritage Bank, the financial world was on fire, not with the usual tickers and IPO buzz, but with the searing viral heat of a cultural reckoning dressed in a white suit and righteous fury. Nova's statement had been retweeted by Fortune 500 CEOs, quoted in the Wall Street Journal, and clipped into a viral video with a remix beat under her parting words. "When you throw a black mother's ID on the ground, don't be surprised when your stock does the same." The fallout was immediate. Crown Heritage's market valuation took a $300 million dip before the bell even rang. Their social media pages were overrun by hashtags like #NovaNotCrown, #RespectBlackMothers, and #billion. But inside the Manhattan branch, Marcus Wilton sat frozen at his desk, sweat soaking through his undershirt, watching emails from corporate legal and PR pile in like artillery fire. He wasn't just in trouble, he was the face of disgrace. Still, in the arrogance of someone who had never truly faced accountability, Marcus tried to shift blame. "She didn't look like she was here on official business," he told the bank's regional VP in a panicked Zoom call. "She looked like someone confused." The VP's stone-cold face didn't even blink. "You threw the identification of the CEO of Nova James Holdings on the floor in front of her mother during a scheduled appointment that we have recorded in both email and building access logs," she said. "You not only disrespected a customer, you single-handedly destroyed a relationship that took 4 years to cultivate. You know who else was pitching to manage her firm's holdings? Goldman. They just called her an hour ago with an offer we can't compete with." Meanwhile, across town in a sleek, glass-walled office with floor-to-ceiling views of the East River, Nova James sat with her mother and legal team sipping coffee. Loretta, humble but not weak, sat quietly, still rattled by yesterday's incident, but warmed by the swift, public support her daughter had garnered. "You didn't have to do all this," she whispered. "I didn't want to cause trouble." Nova smiled and touched her mother's hand. "You didn't cause trouble, Mama. You revealed it. That man made a decision about your worth based on what he saw, not who you were. He saw skin, he saw age, he saw class, but what he didn't see was power." Her voice carried, firm yet grounded, as she turned to her chief of operations. What's the update on our accounts? All funds are being transferred to Goldman's private wealth division. They gave us a full suite of perks: concierge service, dedicated legacy planning, no gatekeeping. Good, Nova said. Make sure they know why they got this deal, and make sure Crown Heritage never forgets why they lost it. Across media circuits, the story had evolved beyond banking. It became about corporate bias, microaggressions, and the unseen ways respect is often withheld from the people who deserve it most. Several black executives shared their own experiences under the hashtag ID on the floor, and Loretta J. Anonymous was now being asked for interviews by NPR, CNN, and even The Today Show. But through it all, she remained humble, telling one interviewer, "I didn't need special treatment, I just wanted dignity." Nova's company gained 14,000 new investor inquiries in 48 hours. The company's valuation spiked, and in the halls of corporate America, an unmistakable message echoed: treating people with dignity isn't a formality, it's strategy. Meanwhile, Marcus Wilton found himself walking into a boardroom for what he assumed would be a warning and perhaps a demotion. Instead, HR was waiting with a box. "You're being terminated effective immediately," they said. "Not just for this incident, but for the culture you've cultivated in this branch for years. We reviewed your internal complaint record. It's single quotes concerning." Outside, the press waited for him. Cameras clicked, microphones extended. "Mr. Wilton, any comment on losing the Nova James account?" someone shouted. He muttered, "No comment," and walked swiftly away. But the truth followed. The world had changed, and it had happened overnight. And all it took was a mother's ID, a careless toast, a daughter who refused to let it slide. The ripple effect of the incident with Nova James and her mother did not stop with the public shaming of a bank manager or the swift transfer of billions in assets. It tore through the financial world like an earthquake, shaking boardrooms, dismantling PR spin cycles, and forcing corporations that had once hidden behind vague diversity pledges to reckon with what accountability actually looked like. By the end of the week, Nova James' story had gone global, not just because of the amount of money involved, but because of the moral clarity that cut through it like a knife. In London, Tokyo, Johannesburg, and São Paulo, the same image circulated online. Nova standing beside her mother outside the bank, one hand holding the very ID that had been tossed, the other wrapped around Loretta's shoulders in a gesture of fierce, familial grace. Publications from Forbes to Al Jazeera dissected the moment, not as an isolated incident, but as a symbol of how prejudice cloaked in professionalism still thrived behind glass doors and tailored suits. Meanwhile, within Crown Heritage Bank, chaos reigned. Internal memos leaked to journalists showed executives scrambling to draft apology statements that sounded sincere but stopped short of admitting liability. Their PR firm billed triple overtime while a dozen vice presidents debated which media outlet would be least damaging for an exclusive. But no narrative could outpace the one already told and lived by Nova and her mother. Nova declined every interview offer. Instead, she posted a single open letter on her company's website, titled "For Every Mother Who's Been Looked Through." It began, "You didn't see her, not truly, not her wisdom, her worth, or her name. And now the world sees you for what you are." The letter, written with poetic precision, called out more than Marcus Wilton. It called out a culture of subtle exclusion, where judgment came faster than service and dignity was rationed out by zip code, wardrobe, and melanin. The letter was shared over 5 million times in 3 days. At Nova James Holdings, the phones rang non-stop. Universities requested her for lectures. Civil rights groups offered awards. Top-tier banks who had once hesitated to partner with a young black woman now offered full boards, endowments, and reconciliation opportunities. But Nova, ever strategic, chose her next move not for optics but for impact. She launched a new initiative, the Loretta Fund, a $100 million investment vehicle dedicated to funding black and women-led financial institutions, fintech startups, and underrepresented entrepreneurs. Her first partner, a quiet major credit union in Atlanta whose founder had once been denied a loan by Crown Heritage 15 years earlier. The fund's motto, printed across its website in bold gold lettering, read, "We don't wait for seats at the table, we build the table." Behind the scenes, Marcus Wilton, now jobless and radioactive in the banking industry, attempted a comeback through interviews claiming misunderstanding. But every time he opened his mouth, the internet roared back with receipts, replays, and screenshots. His reputation, once built on empty charm and shallow credentials, now collapsed under the weight of one careless moment and a lifetime of unchecked bias. In contrast, Loretta James, a retired schoolteacher who had once quietly held her breath in bank lines to be taken seriously, now found herself seated in a panel beside economists and policy leaders. One evening, while preparing for a televised town hall, she told Nova, "You didn't just stand up for me, you changed how people like me get seen." Nova smiled. "No, Mama, you changed it the second you walked into that bank and didn't lower your head when they tried to make you feel small. I just made sure the world saw it." As Crown Heritage's quarterly earnings plummeted, and their competitors absorbed not just Nova's business but her message. Executives at other major firms took note. It wasn't enough to hire day consultants or post black squares in June. It was time to clean house, because one black mother's ID had sparked more than outrage. It had sparked a movement. And in the financial capitals of the world, from Wall Street to Silicon Valley, a reckoning was coming that no one could bank their way out of. Weeks passed, but the echoes of what had happened inside Crown Heritage Bank's marble-lined lobby continued to resound across boardrooms, newsrooms, and living rooms around the globe. While Marcus Wilton faded into obscurity, his name synonymous with corporate arrogance and unchecked prejudice, Nova James rose higher, not merely as a CEO, but as a symbol of cultural momentum, the kind that turns quiet dignity into sweeping systemic change. Behind the scenes, Nova had never slowed. While the media clung to her image, she remained relentlessly focused on results. The Loretta Fund had already closed on investments in 5 startups, including a black woman-led AI firm in Detroit, a sustainable finance app in Ghana, and a Latina-run credit literacy program in Los Angeles. But it wasn't just money yet. It was mentorship, infrastructure, power, redistribution. With every move, Nova sent a message: if the old systems won't open their doors, we will build cities. And while she became a hero to many, she never forgot the root of it all: her mother, Loretta, who remained by her side, grace intact, never seeking the spotlight but radiating strength within it. When the National Bankers Association asked Loretta to deliver a keynote on dignity and access, she hesitated. "I'm not a banker," she told Nova. "I'm not a CEO. I'm just a mother." But Nova smiled softly and said, "That's exactly why they need to hear from you. Because too many men in ties forget that every account number is tied to someone's home, someone's hope. Remind them." And so, Loretta James, former public school teacher, stood on a stage in front of 3,000 financial leaders in Washington, D.C., her voice trembling at first, then strong. "When I walked into that bank, I didn't ask for privilege," she said. "I asked to be seen. I came with every document my daughter told me to bring. I followed every step, and still I was treated like I didn't belong. But what they didn't know was my daughter built that table. She didn't walk away from that disrespect. She turned it into legacy." The room rose to its feet. Men and women wept. Executives sat in silence, some for the first time hearing what exclusion felt like from someone who'd lived it. The clip of her speech racked up 40 million views in a week. Meanwhile, Nova's firm reached its most significant milestone yet, a $1.2 billion valuation, officially making her one of the youngest black female billionaires in history. She celebrated not with champagne but with her mother in their childhood home in Atlanta, collard greens, cornbread, and laughing at old church stories. "It still feels unreal sometimes," Nova confessed that night, curled up on the couch with her mother. "How one moment, one insult can ignite so much." Loretta looked at her with the same eyes that once helped Nova with math homework at the kitchen table. "It wasn't just the moment, baby. It was the way you answered it. You didn't just fight back, you built something they can't tear down." But even as Nova rose, Crown Heritage Bank continued to fall. Clients pulled their money. Stockholders revolted. By the end of the quarter, the CEO was forced to step down, and the board released a public apology. Too little, too late. New leadership attempted to rebuild trust, but the damage was irreversible. Nova had made an example not through vengeance, but vision. She hadn't shouted. She didn't demand anyone be cancelled. She had simply redirected power like water flowing around stone, proving that the future belonged to those who dignify others, not diminish them. Months later, Nova stood before her company's employees, nearly 600 strong now, and announced the construction of the Loretta Center for Economic Equity, a multi-campus nonprofit designed to train, fund, and launch black and minority-owned financial institutions. "We're not here to knock on closed doors," she told them. "We're here to build doors of our own and leave them open for everyone." The room erupted in applause. And somewhere, perhaps in a quiet neighborhood where a young girl watched that speech from a cracked tablet, another future CEO was born. One who would know, deep in her bones, that her name, her voice, her mother's name, all mattered. No bank, no board, no broken system could ever convince her otherwise.